The scarf wasn't hers. I stood in our kitchen at 11:47 p.m., watching my wife Sophie fumble with her keys like she'd never used them before, and that expensive silk thing draped around her neck screamed someone else's money, someone else's taste, someone else's bed. "You're up late," she said, not meeting my eyes. The lie was already forming on her lips. I could see it in the way she touched her collarbone, a tell I'd learned after 8 years of marriage. Couldn't sleep. I poured myself another whiskey, the ice clinking against the glass like a countdown timer. "How was your girls' weekend with Maya and Brianna?" Sophie's laugh came out too sharp, too quick. "Oh, you know how it is. Wine, gossip, face masks. Very therapeutic." Therapeutic. I rolled the word around my mouth like a marble. "That's a new perfume you're wearing. Smells expensive. Masculine." Her hand flew to her throat. It's from that new boutique downtown. You wouldn't know it. I wouldn't know it because I'd never been invited to know it. Just like I'd never been invited to know about the late-night phone calls she took in the bathroom, or the credit card statements that showed charges at restaurants I'd never been to, or the way she'd started shaving her legs every single day instead of just before we went out. "Nick, we need to talk." Sophie dropped her purse on the counter with a thud that sounded like a gavel. "This isn't working anymore." "What isn't working?" "This." She gestured between us like we were broken furniture. "You questioning every move I make. You acting suspicious and controlling. I need space to breathe, to be myself." I took a slow sip of whiskey. "And being yourself involves spending weekends with other people." "If you mean my friends, then yes." Her voice rose, gaining that righteous edge she used when she was about to make me the villain. "And if you must know, Jared's been joining us sometimes. He's going through a rough divorce, and we're just being supportive." Jared. Finally, a name for the shadow that had been haunting our marriage for 3 months. Jared, who owned that pretentious art gallery downtown. Jared, whose cologne was apparently therapeutic. "Supportive," I repeated. "Yes, supportive." "Something you wouldn't understand." Sophie's eyes flashed with something that looked almost like hatred. "Look, Nick, I'm going to be direct with you. If you can't accept me spending time with Jared, if you can't trust me to have male friends, then maybe we shouldn't be together." The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a house fire. 8 years of marriage, reduced to an ultimatum delivered at midnight in our kitchen while she wore another man's scarf. I set down my glass and looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I'd met at a coffee shop in Boston, who'd laughed at my terrible jokes and stolen French fries off my plate. The woman who'd cried when I proposed on the beach in Maine, who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health, for better or worse. That woman was gone. In her place stood a stranger wearing my wife's face, demanding I accept her betrayal or lose her entirely. "Fair enough," I said. Sophie blinked, clearly expecting a fight. "What?" I said, "Fair enough. You're right. If you need to spend your weekends with Jared, then maybe we shouldn't be together." For a moment, she looked almost disappointed, like I'd ruined a script she'd been rehearsing. Then her expression hardened into something cold and satisfied. "Fine. I'm glad we understand each other." She grabbed her purse and headed toward the stairs. "I'll be staying in the guest room until we figure out the details." I watched her climb the stairs, her heels clicking against the hardwood like a countdown. When I heard the guest room door slam, I picked up her purse from where she'd forgotten it on the counter. Inside, nestled between her wallet and makeup bag, was a phone I'd never seen before, a cheap burner with a cracked screen and dozens of unread messages. I opened the first thread. Sophie. "He's so clueless it's almost sad. Asked about the perfume tonight." Brianna. "Did you tell him it was from that boutique? LOL." Sophie. "Of course. He bought it completely. I swear he'd believe me if I told him I was a virgin." Maya. "When are you going to pull the trigger? This is getting messy." Sophie. "Soon. I'm setting up the ultimatum tonight. Either he accepts Jared or I walk. Either way, I win." Brianna. "What if he calls your bluff?" Sophie. "He won't. Nick's too scared of being alone. He'll take whatever scraps I give him." I scrolled down, my hands surprisingly steady. "Can't wait to have you all to myself this weekend. That thing you did with your tongue? Stop. You're making me wet. Nick's right downstairs." Even better. "Think he can hear us when you moan my name?" The messages went on. Explicit photos. Detailed plans for their next encounter. A group chat where Sophie, Brianna, and Maya dissected every aspect of my personality like I was a lab specimen. Maya: I still can't believe he hasn't figured it out. You're not exactly subtle. That's what makes it fun. He's so desperate to believe I still love him that he'll ignore all the evidence. What's the endgame here? You can't keep both of them forever. Sophie: I'm working on pushing him toward divorce. If he files first, I look like the victim. If I file, I look like the bad guy. Either way, I get the house and half his retirement. Maya: Diabolical. I love it. Sophie: The best part? He'll probably blame himself. If only I'd been a better husband. Men are so predictable. I set the phone down and poured another whiskey. My hands weren't shaking anymore. In fact, I felt strangely calm, like the moment in a horror movie when the victim finally sees the monster clearly and stops running. Sophie thought I was predictable. She thought I was clueless. She thought I was too scared of being alone to fight back. She was about to learn how wrong she could be. The next morning, Sophie was gone before I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Staying at Brianna's for a few days to think. Don't call me. I crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash, then made coffee and called in sick to work. I had more important things to do than create advertising campaigns for breakfast cereals. My first stop was Leo's apartment. Leo Martinez had been my best friend since college, back when we were both convinced we'd change the world with our brilliant ideas and unlimited energy. He'd gone into cybersecurity, I'd gone into advertising. He'd stayed single and happy, I'd gotten married and miserable. But Leo had one quality that made him invaluable in situations like this. He had absolutely no moral qualms about invading people's privacy if they deserved it. You look like hell, he said when he opened the door. Leo was wearing a bathrobe at noon and eating cereal straight from the box, living the bachelor dream. I need your help with something. Does it involve your wife? How did you know? Because you've looked like a kicked puppy for the past 3 months, and now you look like you want to kick someone else. He stepped aside to let me in. What did she do? I handed him Sophie's burner phone. Read the messages. Leo scrolled through the threads, his expression growing darker with each swipe. Jesus, Nick. How long has this been going on? 3 months, based on the timestamps. Maybe longer. And you just found this last night? She gave me an ultimatum. Accept her friendship with Jared or end the marriage. I told her fair enough. Leo looked up from the phone. Please tell me you're not just going to roll over and let her screw you in the divorce. I'm not rolling over. But I'm not going to fight dirty either. I'm going to fight smart. What do you need me to do? Can you clone this phone? I want to monitor their communications without them knowing. Leo grinned, and for a moment I saw the mischievous kid who'd helped me hack into our high school's computer system to change our grades. Can I clone a phone? Nick, I can clone a phone, mirror it to your laptop, set up alerts for specific keywords, and probably order you a pizza while I'm at it. Just the cloning for now. While Leo worked his magic, I called my office and spoke to my boss, Richard Kellerman. Richard was a decent guy who'd been trying to convince me to take a promotion that would involve relocating to our London office. I'd been turning it down for months because Sophie had refused to leave her job, her friends, her whole life in Boston. Nick, good to hear from you, Richard said. Feeling better? Actually, Richard, I wanted to talk to you about that London position. There was a pause. The one you've turned down 3 times? My circumstances have changed. Is it still available? It's available, but I'd need an answer by the end of the week. The client wants someone in place by the 1st of next month. You'll have my answer by Friday. After I hung up, Leo handed me back Sophie's phone and a small device that looked like a USB drive. This will mirror everything on her phone to your laptop, he said. Texts, calls, photos, location data, the works. Just plug it in and run the software I installed. Is this legal? It's her phone, and you're still married. Technically, it's community property. Leo's grin turned predatory. Besides, she's the one cheating. I'd say all bets are off. I spent the afternoon setting up the surveillance system and doing research on Jared Wynn. What I found was illuminating. Jared owned the Wynn Gallery downtown, a pretentious space that specialized in, quote, emerging artists, and overpriced wine at opening nights. He'd been married twice, both marriages ending in messy divorces where he'd been accused of infidelity. He drove a BMW he couldn't afford, lived in a loft apartment that cost more than my mortgage, and had a reputation around town as a smooth-talking predator who specialized in married women going through midlife crises. In other words, he was exactly the kind of man Sophie would find irresistible. The mirrored phone started buzzing with activity around 5 p.m. Sophie was at Brianna's apartment, texting with Jared about their plans for the evening. Jared, meet me at the gallery at 8. I want to show you my private collection. Sophie, is that what we're calling it now? Jared, among other things, wear that black dress I like. Sophie, the one Nick bought me for our anniversary? Jared, perfect. I love the irony. I closed the laptop and poured myself a scotch. It was only Tuesday, and I already had enough evidence to destroy Sophie in a divorce court. But that felt too easy, too clean. She'd spent 3 months humiliating me in private, treating me like a fool, while she planned my destruction. I wanted her to understand what that felt like. My phone rang. It was Mrs. Haskell, our elderly neighbor who spent most of her time watching the neighborhood through her front window like a one-woman surveillance system. Nick, dear, I hope you don't mind me calling, she said in her warbling voice. But I couldn't help noticing that Sophie's been coming and going at odd hours lately. Mrs. Haskell was 83 years old, lived alone with 3 cats, and knew everyone's business within a 4-block radius. She was also sharp as a tack, and had never liked Sophie. Oh? Well, it's just that I saw her leaving with a man yesterday morning. Not you, dear. A different man. Taller, with one of those ridiculous little beards. What time was this? Around 9:30. I was watering my plants on the porch when they came out of your house together. She was wearing the same clothes from the night before, if you catch my meaning. I caught her meaning perfectly. While I'd been at work Monday morning, Sophie had brought Jared to our house. Our bed. Our home. Mrs. Haskell, would you be interested in doing me a small favor? Of course, dear. What do you need? Just keep watching. And maybe take some photos if you see anything interesting. I have a very good camera, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Digital zoom and everything. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and made a list. Not a list of evidence or legal strategies, but a list of everyone who had betrayed me. Sophie, obviously. Jared. Brianna and Maya, who had encouraged and enabled the affair while pretending to be my friends. They thought I was predictable. They thought I was weak. They were about to discover that the quiet, nice guy they'd been laughing at had been paying very close attention. And now it was time to show them what 8 years of marriage to a manipulative narcissist had taught me about psychological warfare. I opened my laptop and started typing an email to Richard Kellerman. Richard, I have made my decision about London. By Thursday, I had enough evidence to destroy Sophie's reputation, end her career, and leave her with nothing in the divorce. Photos of her and Jared entering and leaving our house, screenshots of their explicit messages, audio recordings of her mocking me to her friends. But I wasn't ready to play those cards yet. Instead, I went to work and acted like nothing had changed. I attended meetings, reviewed campaigns, and made small talk with colleagues who had no idea my marriage was imploding. The performance was almost therapeutic. Around lunch, I got a text from Sophie. We need to talk. Can you meet me at Cafe Luna at 2? Cafe Luna was where we'd had our first date. Either Sophie was feeling nostalgic, or she was trying to manipulate me with sentiment. Given what I knew about her, I was betting on manipulation. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a table in the back corner where I could see the entire restaurant. Sophie walked in at exactly 2 p.m., looking like she'd spent the morning at a spa. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless, her outfit carefully chosen to remind me of what I was supposedly losing. You look good, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. I've missed you. Have you? Of course I have. Nick, I know things got heated the other night, but I've been thinking. She reached across the table and touched my hand. Maybe we can work this out. What did you have in mind? I want to be honest with you. Completely honest. Sophie's eyes filled with crocodile tears. Jared and we've become close. Very close. But it doesn't have to mean anything. It's just physical. Just physical. Yes. And I think maybe that's what our marriage needs. A little excitement. A little freedom. She squeezed my hand. What if we open things up? You could see other people too. I stared at her, genuinely amazed by her audacity. She was trying to retroactively legitimize her affair by turning it into some kind of progressive relationship experiment. You want me to share you with Jared. I want us to be honest about our needs. You're a good man, Nick, but you're not exactly adventurous. Jared helps me explore parts of myself that I can't explore with you. Such as? Sophie leaned forward, lowering her voice to what she probably thought was a seductive whisper. He makes me feel alive, dangerous. When I'm with him, I remember what it's like to be desired. And I don't make you feel desired? You make me feel safe, comfortable. But sometimes a woman needs more than comfort. I nodded slowly, like I was actually considering her proposal. And what would this arrangement look like, practically speaking? Sophie's face lit up. She thought she was winning. Well, I'd probably spend most weekends with Jared. Maybe some weeknights, too. But I'd always come home to you. You'd be my anchor, my stability, your safety net. Exactly, she smiled, like she'd just solved world hunger. And you'd be free to explore, too. Find someone who appreciates your qualities. My qualities. You know what I mean. You're steady, reliable, financially secure. There are women who value those things. I pulled my hand away from hers and signaled the waitress for the check. I need to think about this. Of course. Take all the time you need. Sophie's smile was radiant with victory. I'm just glad we can finally be honest with each other. I paid for our untouched coffees and walked Sophie to her car. She kissed me on the cheek before driving away, leaving behind a cloud of Jared's cologne. That evening, I drove to the Gutter Hat, a dive bar on the south side of town where I knew Sophie and her friends would never set foot. It was the kind of place where the beer was cheap, the music was loud, and nobody asked questions about why you were drinking alone on a Thursday night. I was nursing my second whiskey when someone slid onto the stool next to me. You're Nick Callahan, right? I turned to see a woman in her 40s with short gray hair and tired eyes. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. Do we know each other? I'm Janet Wynn, Jared's second ex-wife. The pieces clicked into place. I'd seen her photo in the newspaper articles about their divorce. Can I buy you a drink? Vodka tonic. Make it a double. We sat in comfortable silence until our drinks arrived. Then Janet raised her glass in a mock toast. To the wives of Jared Wynn, past, present, and future. I'm not his wife. No. But your wife is his latest conquest. Word gets around in a town this size. Janet took a long sip of her drink. How long has it been going on? 3 months that I know of, maybe longer. Sounds about right. That's Jared's pattern. 3 months to hook them, 3 months to reel them in, 3 months to get bored and move on to the next one. What happened with your marriage? Janet laughed bitterly. Same thing that's happening to you. He seduced me away from my first husband with all his artistic bullshit and bohemian charm. Made me feel like I was some kind of muse instead of a middle-aged accountant going through a midlife crisis. But you married him. Biggest mistake of my life. Jared doesn't want a wife. He wants an audience. Someone to worship his mediocre art and fund his expensive lifestyle while he screws around with other women. She finished her drink and signaled for another. The divorce cost me everything. My house, my savings, my relationship with my kids. He's very good at making himself look like the victim. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Get even. Janet's eyes hardened. You seem like a decent guy, Nick. Don't let him destroy your life like he destroyed mine. What would you suggest? Hit him where it hurts. His reputation, his business, his ego. She pulled a business card from her purse and slid it across the bar. That's my lawyer. Tell him I sent you. He knows all of Jared's tricks. I pocketed the card and bought Janet another round. We talked for another hour about Jared's weaknesses, his debts, his enemies in the local art scene. By the time I left the Gutter Hat, I had a much clearer picture of my wife's lover, and a much better idea of how to destroy him. The next morning, I called Richard Kellerman and accepted the London position. Then I called a real estate agent about putting the house on the market. Finally, I called Janet's lawyer and made an appointment for the following week. Sophie texted me around noon. Have you thought about my proposal? I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Still thinking. Can we talk this weekend? Of course. I'm so glad you're being open-minded about this. Open-minded. That was one way to put it. I spent Friday evening at Leo's apartment. finalizing the details of my plan. By Sunday night, everything would be in motion. Sophie and Jared thought they were playing chess, but they'd actually been playing checkers. And I was about to flip the board. Saturday morning, I woke up alone in the house that had once felt like home, and now felt like a crime scene. Sophie had texted me the night before to let me know she'd be spending the weekend at Jared's loft, thinking about our future. Our future. As if we had one. I made coffee and opened my laptop to check the mirrored phone. Sophie and Jared had been busy. Nick's actually considering the open marriage thing. I can't believe how easy this is. Told you he was a pushover. Most husbands would have thrown you out by now. Sophie. He's probably terrified of being alone. Men like him always are. Jared. Men like him deserve to be alone. No backbone. Sophie. Once this is official, we can stop sneaking around. And getting tired of pretending to feel guilty. You never felt guilty. That's what I love about you. True. I just feel sorry for him. It's like kicking a puppy. I closed the laptop and called Mrs. Haskell. "Good morning, dear," she said. "I have some lovely photos for you. That man with the beard has been coming and going all week." "I'll be right over." Mrs. Haskell's house was a mirror image of mine, but where Sophie had insisted on modern minimalism, Mrs. Haskell had embraced cozy maximalism. Every surface was covered with doilies, family photos, and ceramic cats. "I made tea," she said, leading me to her kitchen table, where a manila envelope waited next to a plate of homemade cookies. The photos were damning. Jared, entering my house on Tuesday morning while I was at work. Sophie, greeting him at the door in a bathrobe. The two of them on my back patio, drinking my wine and laughing at something on Sophie's phone. Jared leaving Thursday evening, carrying what looked like a bottle from my liquor cabinet. "These are perfect, Mrs. Haskell." "Thank you." "Oh, I'm not done yet." She pulled out a small digital recorder. I also got some audio from Wednesday afternoon. They were quite loud. I listened to 30 seconds of Sophie and Jared having sex in my bedroom before turning off the recorder. Some evidence was too thorough. "You've been very helpful." "That woman never deserved you," Mrs. Haskell said firmly. "I knew she was trouble the day you brought her home. Too pretty. Too charming. Women like that are always hiding something." I spent the rest of Saturday preparing. I printed photos, organized documents, and made a series of phone calls. By evening, everything was in place. Sunday morning, I sent Sophie a text. "Ready to talk about our arrangement. Meet me at the house at 2 p.m. She responded immediately. "Can't wait. This is going to be so good for both of us." At 1:45, I was sitting in my living room when Sophie's key turned in the lock. She walked in looking radiant, practically glowing with triumph. "Nick! I'm so proud of you for being open to this." She kissed my cheek and sat down next to me on the couch. "I know it's unconventional, but I really think I've made my decision," I interrupted. "And?" "I want a divorce." Sophie's smile faltered. "What?" "I said I want a divorce. I've already spoken to a lawyer." But you said you'd consider the open marriage." "I did consider it. For about 30 seconds. Then I realized I'd rather be alone than share my wife with a failed artist who can't afford his own liquor." Sophie's face went through several expressions. Confusion, anger, fear, before settling on wounded innocence. "Nick, you're being irrational. This is just because you're scared of change." "I'm not scared of change, Sophie. I'm embracing it." I stood up and walked to the mantelpiece where I'd arranged several manila envelopes. "In fact, I've made quite a few changes this week." "What are those?" "Evidence. Photos of you and Jared entering and leaving this house while I was at work. Screenshots of your text messages discussing your affair and your plans to manipulate me. Audio recordings of you mocking me to your friends." Sophie's face went pale. "You've been spying on me?" "I've been paying attention. Something I should have done months ago." I picked up the first envelope. "This one goes to your boss at the consulting firm. I think HR will be very interested in how you've been using company time to coordinate your extramarital activities." "You wouldn't." "This one goes to Jared's ex-wives. Apparently there's a whole support group of women he's screwed over. They're very interested in meeting his latest victim." I held up a third envelope. "And this one goes to the IRS. Did you know Jared's been selling fake artwork and not reporting the income?" Janet Wynn was very helpful in explaining his business model. Sophie stood up, her hands shaking. Nick, please. We can work this out. I made a mistake, but you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. Multiple choices. For months. I walked to the front door and opened it. I've changed the locks. Your things are packed and waiting on the porch. This is my house too. Actually, it's not. I bought it before we got married, and it's not in your name. My lawyer was very clear about that. I smiled at her, the first genuine smile I'd felt in months. You have 30 seconds to get your things and leave, or I start making phone calls. Sophie stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Who are you? This isn't like you. You're right. The old Nick would have let you walk all over him while he tried to figure out what he did wrong. But you cured me of that delusion. I checked my watch. 20 seconds. She grabbed her suitcases from the porch and loaded them into her car with jerky, panicked movements. Before driving away, she rolled down her window and shouted, "You'll regret this! You'll never find anyone else." I waved goodbye and went back inside. An hour later, my phone started buzzing with calls and texts. Sophie, begging me to reconsider. Brianna, calling me an asshole. Maya, threatening to post negative reviews of my advertising agency online. I blocked all their numbers and poured myself a celebratory scotch. At 6 p.m., I got a call from an unknown number. Is this Nick Callahan? The voice was male, angry, and unfamiliar. Who's asking? This is Jared Wynn. What the hell do you think you're doing? I think I'm having a drink in my house. What are you doing? You sent my business information to the IRS. You called my ex-wives. You're trying to destroy my life. I'm not trying to destroy your life, Jared. I'm succeeding. I took a sip of scotch. How does it feel to be the victim for once? You have no idea who you're messing with. Actually, I know exactly who I'm messing with. A 40-year-old failure who seduces married women because single women see through his act too quickly. I laughed. Sophie's all yours now, by the way. I hope you enjoy supporting her shopping habits on your fake art sales. This isn't over. Yes, it is. It's been over since the moment you decided to screw another man's wife in his own bed. I finished my drink. Stay away from me, stay away from my house, and maybe I won't send those photos to the local newspaper. I hung up and immediately called Leo. It's done, I told him. How do you feel? Free. And for the first time in months, I actually meant it. Monday morning, I walked into Richard Kellerman's office and signed the papers for the London transfer. My flight was booked for Thursday. I had be gone before Sophie and Jared figured out their next move. Not that it mattered. By the time I landed in London, their lives would be in ruins, and I'd be starting fresh in a city where no one knew my name or my history. Sophie had been right about one thing. I was predictable. She just hadn't predicted the right thing. She'd thought I was too weak to fight back. Instead, I'd been too smart to fight fair. Tuesday morning brought a knock on my door at 7 a.m. I opened it to find Sophie standing on my porch, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, and she was wearing the same clothes from Sunday. We need to talk, she said. No, we don't. I started to close the door, but she put her hand against it. Please, Nick. 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She walked to the living room and sat down on the edge of the couch, like she was afraid to get comfortable. I left Jared, she said. Congratulations. I made a terrible mistake. I see that now. Tears started flowing down her cheeks, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I was confused, going through some kind of midlife crisis. But I love you, Nick. I've always loved you. You have a funny way of showing it. I know I hurt you, but we can get past this. We can go to counseling, work on our marriage. She reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. There's nothing to make right, Sophie. We're getting divorced. But I don't want a divorce. What you want stopped mattering the moment you brought another man into our bed. I stood up and walked to the window. Besides, I thought you'd be happy. Now you can explore all those parts of yourself you couldn't explore with boring old me. I don't want to explore anything. I want my husband back. I turned to look at her. Which husband? The clueless one who'd believe anything you told him? The predictable one who was too scared of being alone to fight back? Or the pathetic one who'd take whatever scraps you threw him? Sophie's face crumpled. You read the messages. I read everything. The messages, the photos, the group chat where you and your friends dissected my personality like I was a lab rat. I walked back to the couch and sat down across from her. Did you really think I was that stupid? No, I was just talking, venting. I didn't mean any of it. You meant every word. And you know what? You were right about some of it. I was clueless. I was predictable. I was scared of being alone. I smiled at her. But I'm not scared anymore. What do you mean? I mean, I'd rather be alone than be with someone who thinks so little of me. I'd rather start over at 40 than spend the rest of my life wondering when you'll get bored again. Sophie wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Where will you go? London. I got the promotion. The one you turned down because I didn't want to move? That's the one. Funny how quickly circumstances can change. She stared at me for a long moment. You're really leaving. Thursday morning. And there's nothing I can say to change your mind? Nothing. Sophie stood up slowly, like an old woman. I'm sorry, Nick. I'm truly, deeply sorry. I know you are. You're sorry you got caught. She flinched like I'd slapped her. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed. Sophie, you spent 3 months cheating on me, lying to me, and planning to take half my assets in a divorce you were going to manipulate me into filing. And you want to talk about fair? She didn't have an answer for that. She walked to the door, then turned back one last time. I hope you find what you're looking for in London. I already found what I was looking for. Self-respect. After she left, I called my lawyer to make sure the divorce papers were ready to be served. Then I called the moving company to confirm they'd be picking up my belongings on Wednesday. Finally, I called Leo. How did it go? He asked. She wanted to reconcile. Please tell me you didn't fall for the tears and apologies. Do I sound like I fell for anything? You sound like a man who's got his life back. Wednesday evening, I was packing my last suitcase when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I answered anyway. Nick, this is Janet Wynn. I wanted to thank you. For what? The IRS raided Jared's gallery this afternoon. Turns out he owes about $200,000 in back taxes and penalties. Janet's voice was practically singing with joy. His business is finished. He'll be lucky if he doesn't go to prison. I'm sorry to hear that, I lied. No, you're not, and neither am I. That bastard destroyed my life, and now he's finally getting what he deserves. She paused. I also heard through the grapevine that your wife lost her job today. Something about inappropriate use of company resources? I hadn't expected that to happen so quickly, but I wasn't surprised. Sophie's boss was a straight-laced woman who didn't tolerate ethical violations. Like I said, I'm sorry to hear that. Sure you are, Janet laughed. Have a good life in London, Nick. You deserve it. Thursday morning, I stood in my empty house and took one last look around. 8 years of marriage, reduced to echoes and dust motes in the morning sunlight. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Where are you tonight? I took a photo of my boarding pass and sent it to her without comment. Then I blocked her number, grabbed my carry-on bag, and walked out the front door. Mrs. Haskell was waiting on her porch with a thermos of coffee and a bag of homemade cookies for the flight. You're doing the right thing, dear, she said, hugging me goodbye. That woman never deserved you. Thank you for everything, Mrs. Haskell. You're a good friend. You write to me from London. I want to hear all about your adventures. The taxi arrived, and I loaded my bags into the trunk. As we drove away, I saw Sophie's car parked at the end of the block. She was sitting behind the wheel, watching me leave. I didn't wave. At the airport, I checked in for my flight and made my way to the first-class lounge. I'd used miles to upgrade my ticket, a small celebration of my newfound freedom. I was sipping a gin and tonic and reading the London Times when my phone buzzed with a call from another unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. You think you've won, don't you? It was Jared, and he sounded drunk. I think I've moved on. You should try it sometime. You destroyed my business, my reputation, my life. You did that yourself when you decided to commit tax fraud. I just pointed the authorities in the right direction. Sophie's devastated. She lost her job because of you. Sophie lost her job because she was using company time and resources to coordinate her affair. Actions have consequences. You're going to pay for this. I looked around the elegant lounge. at the other travelers heading off to new adventures and opportunities. Actually, I already paid first-class ticket to London, where I'll be making twice my current salary and living in a city where no one knows about my cheating ex-wife or her pathetic boyfriend. This isn't over. Yes, it is. It's been over since the moment you decided to sleep with my wife. You just didn't know it yet. I hung up and turned off my phone. Whatever Sophie and Jared did next was no longer my problem. An hour later, I was settling into my first-class seat when the flight attendant offered me champagne. I accepted and raised my glass in a silent toast to the life I was leaving behind and the life I was flying toward. Sophie had been wrong about me being too scared to be alone. I wasn't alone. I was free. As the plane lifted off from Boston Logan, I looked down at the city where I'd spent the last 8 years of my life. Somewhere down there, Sophie was probably crying into a bottle of wine, while Jared figured out how to explain his legal troubles to his creditors. I felt a moment of something that might have been pity. Then the plane banked toward the Atlantic, and I stopped looking back. 6 hours later, I was in London, starting over in a city that sparkled with possibility. I had a new job, a new apartment, and a new life waiting for me. Most importantly, I had something I hadn't possessed in months: self-respect. Sophie had taught me an invaluable lesson, though not the one she'd intended. She'd taught me that I was stronger than I thought, smarter than she'd given me credit for, and definitely not the kind of man who'd accept scraps from someone else's table. I'd told her fair enough when she'd given me her ultimatum, and in the end, that's exactly what I'd gotten. Fair enough. The end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching, or 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 watching.